Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another YouTube video. Today, we're going to be talking about the history of the crazy man named Dr. Martin Brenner. The mysterious, the ruthless, the ambitious, the manipulating, crazy, psychotic individual that is Dr. Martin Brenner. His history goes way past, or way beyond just what we see in Stranger Things. There's a whole entire backstory to his character that I'm going to be explaining today. But before we get into it, guys, make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe, turn on post notifications. Let's go for 145 likes on the video. All you have to do is tap the like button. It really does help me out a lot. Puts the video on the algorithm and helps me get more subscribers. We're on the road to 60K. My Patreon is in the description. I'll be releasing exclusive content over there in my new Discord as well if you want to join that and all my other socials. I appreciate all love and support, guys. And without further ado, let me explain the crazy history of Dr. Martin Brenner. It all started in a small town in Indiana named Hawkins. Everyone who lived there had quiet, normal lives, but little did they know some of those terrifying tests were being performed on innocent children right there in their small hometown. This was because the government was trying to make weapons for the Cold War. As a researcher and director of Hawkins National Laboratory, Dr. Brenner was manipulating, ruthless, and ambitious. After Dr. Martin Brenner, aka Papa, returned to Stranger Things in Season 4, Episode 1, a lot of people, including myself, were interested in his backstory because he supposedly died in Season 1 whenever he got attacked by a Demogorgon, but he somehow survived. So today we're going to discuss the history of this mysterious man. In 1953, Dr. Brenner was involved in the controversial project called MKUltra, which was a CIA-sanctioned research program designed to develop mind control techniques in which the subjects suffered extreme conditions at the hands of the researchers. This included the use of psychedelic drugs, physical and mental abuse, sleep deprivation, and malnourishment. And of course, this also happened in real life, as you can do your own research, but it's some pretty terrifying stuff, so just be prepared. Later on in 1959, Brenner was contacted by a woman named Virginia Creel, who believed that her son, Henry, was responsible for a number of indescribable happenings at her household. Some of these included lights flickering, animals being killed, and Alice, who was Henry's little sister, waking up with nightmares out of nowhere, as we've seen later on in the show. After Virginia and Alice Creel were found dead at the Creel house, Henry's father, Victor, was presumed to be the murderer. However, Brenner quickly got involved with the situation and learned that Henry not only had an appetite for murder, but he possessed remarkable psychokinetic abilities. Victor Creel was eventually told that Henry entered a coma and died a week later due to shock, but the truth was his death was a hoax, orchestrated by none other than Dr. Martin Brenner. As soon as Brenner seen the opportunity, he did everything he could to cover it up, to make it look like Victor killed his entire family, when in reality, Henry wasn't even dead, and in fact, he was essentially a superhuman that killed his mom and his sister. Brenner then took Henry Creel to the Hawkins National Laboratory where he intended to both study and closely supervise the young boy. He used all this research that he did on Henry to make experimental drugs that he would later use on test subjects in exchange for money. Brenner eventually inserted a chip called Soteria into Henry's neck, which was a miniature device that suppressed his powers and tracked his every movement. However, Henry described it as he became Brenner's prisoner, which honestly was true. Brenner did all of this because he never trusted Henry, not even for a second. He always knew that Henry was capable of taking him down, and this is why we see him talk so highly of Henry later on in Season 4 to 11. Because he never wanted Elle to underestimate Vecna's powers, as he was the first superhuman to ever exist on this planet. Dr. Brenner said just because Eleven got her powers back does not mean that she is ready for Vecna. Then later on, he told Eleven, you can't just relearn how to walk, you're going to have to learn how to fly if you want a chance at defeating Henry. Henry was then designated to be Hawkins' lab first test subject when Brenner tattooed 001 on his forearm to mark the occasion. However, over time, Henry became one of the several workers who assisted Brenner and attended to the lab. Brenner still deeply distrusted Henry, and because of this, he would occasionally order the other workers to torture him as a means of intimidation, which in my opinion wasn't the brightest idea considering what eventually happens later on in the show. In hopes to recreate Henry's powers in other children, Brenner capitalized off what he had learned from Henry over the last 20 years and began a new program. In this new program, he gave volunteer test subjects experimental drugs and placed them inside of sensory deprivation tanks. His goal was to abduct the children of the pregnant test subjects who he believed would have similar psychokinetic abilities to Henry. Later on in 1969, Brenner was brought in to overtake MKUltra testing at Hawkins' lab where he became the official director. With him taking over the place, he decided to fire previous test subjects and implement a shift from subjects from mental asylums and other facilities to healthy, normal college students. If that doesn't show you how insane Dr. Brenner was, then I don't know what will. He was willing to do anything he could to replicate 001. He set up facilities designed to scan for potential subjects at college campuses in Indiana, including Indiana University in Bloomington, where Terry Ives attended. After proving she was capable, Terry was brought to the Hawkins lab to begin regular tests, which were often overseen by Dr. Brenner. Through some blood testing, Brenner discovered that Terry became pregnant during the program. In June of 1971, she gave birth to her daughter named Jane, and Brenner and his staff abducted her due to the child's dormant psychokinetic abilities, which were brought upon her as a result of the experimentation on her mother, Terry Ives. Jane's birth was Brenner's goal, as he subjected Terry to these experiments in order to try and produce a replica of Henry. In 1973, Project MKUltra was shut down, and Terry filed a lawsuit against Brenner, but it was dismissed because Brenner did everything in his power for there to be a lack of evidence. When the details of MKUltra became public knowledge, Hawkins Lab managed to block inquiries despite their legal obligation, and they continued their experiments on children without anyone finding out. In 1978, Terry attempted to retrieve Jane from Hawkins Lab because she knew she was still alive. She ended up breaking into the building with a gun, and during her raid, she unintentionally allowed 3 other experiments escape: Francine, Ricky, and Marcy. Brenner's right-hand agent, Connie Frazier, and the other security guards fatally shot Francine, but Ricky and Marcy escaped. Brenner told a dying Francine that he would find the other 2 experiments. Later on, Brenner forced Terry to be subjected to electroshock therapy, which left her in a seemingly permanent catatonic state for years after. Dr. Brenner then went on to raise Jane under the name 11, and Brenner built himself up as a father figure in the mind of 11 and made her refer to him as Papa. Meanwhile, Kali Prasad, who was known as Number 8, managed to escape Brenner's lab before September 9th of 1979. Subjects 3, 6, and 9 were replaced by this day, but 8 was not. On September 9th, 1979, Brenner witnessed the massacre at Hawkins Lab, which resulted in the deaths of most workers, guards, and all the remaining children at the lab, with the exception of 11. Brenner thought 11 was responsible for the massacre, but after seeing 11 collapse due to having used her powers at a high limit and noticing a large black crack in the wall, Brenner decided to check the surveillance cameras to see what really happened. Watching through the lab's security cameras, Brenner discovered that 1 was responsible for the massacre. The Soteria chip in his neck had been removed by 11. We later seen in the show that 1 was very manipulating and strategic to the point to where he convinced 9-year-old 11 to remove the chip from his neck. His plan was genius, and it worked. Dr. Brenner then witnessed footage of 11 and 1 engaging in a telekinetic fight where 11 had managed to gain the upper hand and used her powers to unintentionally rip a hole through time and space. This opened a portal to an alternate dimension which sent 1 into that dimension. So just to put it in perspective, throughout all of the seasons 1, 2, and 3 when 11 showed her powers, those moments where she used them were just a fraction of how powerful she actually is. In season 5, I expect 11 to be way more powerful than we've ever seen her before. She quite literally might be able to fly, as Brenner told her she would need to do in order to kill Vecna. Back to the story. With 11 as his last test subject, Brenner decided to continue training her and enhance her psychic abilities so they can be as powerful as they were when 11 opened the portal. In addition, Brenner believed that 1 had survived and was trapped in the alternate dimension, but did not know for sure. So he had 11 unknowingly look for 1 by learning mental remote traveling while spying on the Soviet Union for the American government. 11 obviously had no idea she was sent there to look for the person who she literally sent to an alternate dimension. From that moment on, everything that happened between 11 and Brenner was showcased in the flashbacks that we've seen throughout the show. In season 5, I expect the story to get even crazier, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dr. Brenner returned due to him having powers. He tested on children for 20 years and successfully made a drug to create superhumans. I would not be surprised if he woke up one day and said, "Hey, I made all these superhumans, why not try this on myself?" That would explain how he survived the attack of the Demogorgon, and it would also explain how he could survive being shot 4 times at the end of season 4, episode 8. Regardless though, this story is insanely deep and I can't wait to see it unfold, and I'm also really hoping that we get to see this story as a prequel one day. This was the story of the insane background of Dr. Martin Brenner. That whole entire story just shows how much the Duffers truly care about their storyline. The fact that Dr. Brenner has an entire storyline before Stranger Things even started is absolutely insane, and it's honestly like insane of how deep it goes and how intense it actually was. I mean, he was literally a psychotic man who was just so brainwashed that he just had to get this, and this to happen when he didn't even realize how many people he was destroying and hurting. Obviously, as we've seen at the end of season 4. At the end of season 4, he seemed very caring. He truly did seem like he cared about 11. But throughout the entire time, he was just blindfolded by the mission. And he never actually just he never like stopped to think that 11, is just a child at the end of the day. I think until season 4. I'm pretty sure, like, in my opinion, when season 4 rolled around, he kind of like realized how bad he treated 11, and that's why he wanted her to say "I love you" to him, and she never did because of that. And then he died. But I did say that I wouldn't be surprised if Papa returned because he had powers. I know we've talked about this a lot. I genuinely would not be surprised at all. Matthew Modine already said he doesn't think Papa's dead. He studied superhumans for 20 years. He made successful drugs that he experimented on humans with. I wouldn't be surprised if he tested those drugs on himself. Who knows, though? It's an insane story, and that was very stressful to read because of so many insane words. Like, I'm not very... I stuttered so much, but it was such a fun read, and it's such an interesting story. If you guys want to learn more about other characters in any TV show or in Stranger Things, and you want me to do a background story of them, make sure to drop a comment down below and suggest some people. And I appreciate you guys watching this video. Make sure to drop a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, spend time with your friends and family, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.